Hi everyone, welcome to MotoTribe. I'm Laura Kraft.
Hannah Rigby.
Emily Prince.
Sarah Merrell.
And we're MotoTribe. Today we're going to be talking about racing, actually a post-race report. So these ladies went racing recently and we're going to hear, was it worth it? All of the effort that went into it, the time commitment, the bike maintenance, the cost. Is it worth it? We've talked already about learning how to ride. We've talked about your first times on track, and now we're going to talk about first times racing. So, with that, let's pass it over to Sarah to give her opinion of kind of the post-race experience.
So I would say overall, definitely worth it. In fact, I think it's one of the best decisions that I have ever made. And that's because going into it, I don't think I realized how fun it would be, how much it would help me get past that plateau that I had gotten into my track riding and take me to another level. And honestly, that's what I had hoped for with racing. Is I heard from so many people that they did track riding, but they would kind of get into the same old, and it was hard for them to progress. But then once they started racing, it's like the green flag goes down and you get off the starting grid and a different mindset kicks in and you just want to be in front and you just want to go. And I heard that that's what happens when you race. And I hope that that's what would happen. And based off my prior experience with racing, which is just racing pit bikes, I had a lot of reason to believe that that could be the case. And so I invested a lot into it, and it did end up working out that way. And I was able to have a personal best at a track that I had ridden quite a bit. But I will say that it did take a bit to get there. And to be able to commit to racing, it does take time. You need to get some track days under your belt, and you need to feel comfortable on the track before you can go race. And so I spent at least 2.5 years really trying to work at track days before I felt comfortable enough to get out there and race. And then there's that financial aspect too. I had a bike, and I talked about it before, but my bike was not a race bike. And so it took a financial investment to get there. And so there's definitely a hard work and time component to it, but there's a money component too. And so you have to be willing to invest in yourself as a rider and to also invest in the bike and in what you're doing. But I had so much fun. I had you ladies there with me, which I think overall that was probably the best part, was that I had a community of people there at the race we were all going through the same emotions. It was the first race for all three of us. And actually, if you, with one of our other friends there, we actually had 4 of us doing this for the first time. And so there was a sense of camaraderie, and that we were all kind of going into the unknown, but it was a better experience than I thought it would be. I was so scared and apprehensive going into it, and everything that I feared ended up not being the case at all. It was like a track day, but on steroids.
Yeah, because that's what I'm curious about it. Like, how is it different than a track day? Like, what feeling was there? Because it's you're going around the same track that you do during a track day. You're just going around a little less and maybe a little more aggressively. So, what was the unknown? What made you treat this differently?
I think that I had always just thought of motorcycle racing as this heart-pounding, adrenaline junkie sport where everyone was just like close passes. And I just thought, I don't know, I just always had this feeling of, I would watch MotoGP races and World Superbike, and I would see these guys and the way that they raced, and I would just think to myself, I can't do that. That's not me. I'm this risk adverse, cautious person at heart. How can I be that? And I would think about what it felt like to be in intermediate group at a track day, packed in with all these people who were making some sketchy passes sometimes. And I would think to myself, how can I do that? How am I going to hold my own in this? But I think as it turns out, club level racing is obviously, it's a lot different than World Superbike or MotoGP. And as I found out, it's actually, I feel like, is a lot less intense than being in a pack of intermediate group riders at a track day. And so I was also nervous about the starts, and those ended up being easier than I thought. And so I think I had all these kind of misconceptions and ideas going in, and it ended up being a lot more chill, and I think a lot easier than I had first thought it would be.
Yeah, I feel I have the same thought process as you. I was very nervous. My husband kept telling me, "You're going to be fine. You're going to be fine. You have thousands upon thousands of miles on this track." And we did our first race at Little Talladega in Alabama, and it's a really small track. It's a great proving ground, and I love that track. It's a great practice place for me, so I'm very confident and comfortable on there. But you're out there with expert racers, and that was the unknown. Like, I did not want to do anything stupid to mess them up or have them run me off the track. Like, I wasn't sure how I would react. I've ridden in advanced group all of last year, or the previous season. So I have gotten past insanely close. Like, I've had my paint taken off. I know what that feels like. And just going into it, I think because Little Tally is such a small track, I think I was afraid that there was going to be a lot of that, and I wasn't sure how I would do. And I actually started having like nightmares, like right before the race, that like I was trying to pass someone and I low-sided into them. So I think that was like that big fear of mine. Would I perform? And I just didn't want to let myself down. So yeah, like going out there, I think shockingly, like we were, I think as a group, collective, a lot calmer than we thought we would be. And I really do think that a huge part of that was because we had such a great support system. I not only had you ladies out there with me, but, in Laura's photo back there, we had our husbands to help us. It felt amazing. On Saturday morning, I got to the track and my husband is already out there warming up my bike, warming up my tires, getting it ready for me to take it through tech. Like, just having people there to worry about everything else for me. And my job was just to race, and I was able to focus on that. That was actually amazing. Coming from track days where I'm doing everything myself, I was so nervous that I would miss the calls, or I'd get out to grid too late and not be able to do a scrubbing lap, or like I just didn't know. None of us knew how that logistically works out. So, going out into that first race, I remember I was just so quiet and my heart was like pounding on the inside, and I was just trying to calm myself down. But literally, as soon as I rolled out of the paddock, I was fine. It was like this amazing calm that came over, along with an excitement, but it was more like a meditative state. So it was amazing. Like, for me, for sure, like it was an exceptional experience. I think everything that I wanted to get out of it, I definitely did. I felt really stagnant in my track riding until now. Like, after my crash last year, I kind of regressed. And so I was struggling with a lot of my fundamentals, and I just couldn't get my head wrapped around it. So it really helped being put out there in the race. You don't think about any of that. You just ride, and it felt incredible.
So the race was very different than a track day, the feeling around it.
Completely. So everyone always says that. And I came into it very skeptical, saying, oh, I know myself. Like Sarah said, she's risk adverse. So am I. At a track day, like I cannot force myself to push past what I feel I can do. Well, in the race, by the end of the second day, I was running 3 seconds a lap faster and consistently than I ever have there. So that blew my mind. I actually didn't think that was going to happen. I was just there for that like awesome feeling of that flow state that I wanted to feel. And so I achieved that. But then the dropped lap times, like those were a huge bonus.
Emily, what about you? Was it all what you thought it would be?
That's a hard thing for me to answer. Similar to my experiences with track riding, I feel like I don't want to say I was disappointed. I think that I thought it would be different for me. I thought that I would find that competitive, drive and push myself harder. And I feel like I got out there and I just rode like I was riding a track day. So, I'm not sure. I'm thinking that might come with time because I'm still fairly, I'd say, like new to track riding. And so I think that with the pressure of like knowing that everything was timed, knowing it's a competition, I got too much in my head and reverted back to like just riding like I didn't know what I was doing and making stupid mistakes. And so I think, I'm not saying that I don't want to do it again, because although I've been sitting here going back and forth, I have decided, yes, I'm doing the next race, and then I'm doing the next one and the next one. And so, I am definitely going to stick with it and keep going. But it was definitely, I think when I got back from the race weekend, initially my thoughts were like, I'm kind of disappointed in myself. And so that's frustrating. Because I am fairly new, I have not hit like a plateau, like what you were saying, Sarah. Like every time that I go to a track, I do way better than I did the last time I was there, because I'm just still learning, still, progressing at a regular rate. And so I think that, I don't know if I was doing better at Tally than I would have been 2 weeks ago had I been there not in a race. I have no idea. Like, what my track time would have been there without there being a race. So maybe that was my faster time. Maybe that's what me pushing. I don't know. I don't have the comparison to be able to tell really. So, I think that I was very nervous about being out with the faster riders, like you guys were saying. That was stressful. I didn't want to be in the way. But as I learned very quickly, I'm not in the way. Like, mm-hmm. The pack was so far ahead of us. Like as soon as we got to turn 1, you wouldn't see them again until they came around and lapped you like at the end of the race. And so that wasn't even a concern. Like I'm not going around the track in this big pack of people battling for spots. I mean, when you're slow, you're not really fighting for spots. It kind of worked out well. Makes it less stressful because you're like, I would be battling with like 1 or 2 people here and there, but it wasn't like you're in this big pack fighting it out. And even like watching some of the other races where there were like the experts out there, even with that, they're not all in a big cluster, like you'd see that as lap by lap, they'd get more and more distant. You might have 2 people fighting for a spot, but like at no point is it like this big clump of people heading into a turn, except for the very first turn. That's the only time the entire race where you're like, wow, there's a lot of people in this turn.
It's really interesting that, you have a hard time understanding, how you stacked up because you don't have that context. So you think that, I think it'd be really interesting for you to go do a track day and then try to compare that lap time, or go race a track that you're fairly proficient at and see. Because I think it's really hard, to put it into perspective. Mm-hmm. So that's challenging, because I think as a racer, and I'm not a racer, I'm a spectator, but as a racer, I would imagine that you would want to feel like you're progressing And if you don't know where you start from, then you don't really know if you're progressing.
Yes, and I 100% agree. And that's why this upcoming race, I am doing a track day, 2 track days at the track the weekend prior to the race. So that will give me a very solid, like you were saying, be able to give that context of like, okay, so I'm going to go do the track days at Roebling next weekend. I'll be able to look at what my lap times are during the track day, see where I feel like I stand, and then be able to directly compare the following weekend, put me out with the race, and see how that goes. And so it'll be interesting to see, like, if I feel like the racing aspect of it gets me more, drops more seconds off my time. I'm sure it will, like, it's just because I didn't know.
Absolutely. I mean, I've ridden with you the last time at Tally, and I mean, we were all dropping lap times and you were right there. Like, yeah, you maybe were 2 seconds behind, but you were dropping your lap times as well. So I think you improved greatly at that track. And I know Tally is not your jam. So I can't wait to see actually what you feel like at a track that you really enjoy, like Barber or Road Atlanta, because I feel that's where you're really going to shine. So
yeah, I agree. And the other thing, I know that we all dealt with this all weekend, but it was very cold. And so, like, with recently having a cold tire crash just 6 weeks ago, or actually it was like 5 weeks before the race, I think that definitely played a big part in my mentality going in. Like, I was terrified of my tires not gripping, So that also just one more mental block, and then throw in like, oh, you're surrounded with people racing, and now I'm going, am I gonna slide?
That's actually a really good point, because all of us ended up sitting out the first practice of the morning, because it was that cold that we would just be jeopardizing possibly having a crash at that cold of a temperature. So we had fewer opportunities to practice because of that. And on top of that, we were running different tires because of the cold. And we were all trying to run DOTs because of it, tires that would perform better in cold weather. And so when you're on tires that you're not accustomed to and grip you're not accustomed to, and you're missing practices, it did make for a little bit more challenging situation. And so do you know what the weather is going to be like at Roebling?
Much, much better. I would just like to say, not only did we not go out for first practice both days, no one did. Like, we got to the track in the morning and it was dead silent until the second round of practices. Like, there was no one that was willing to go out at those temperatures. I mean, it's not just us being wimps. It's literally no one wanted to ride.
It was 30 degrees at 8 a.m. when the track went hot. Nobody was out there. I take that back. I think like 2 people went out the first day, and I think it was just for a shakedown. And even the second practice session was maybe an hour and a half later, and I only went out for 3-4 laps tops, just to do a mental and physical shakedown. I went into the races with 0 practice. I mean, I was running super slow lap times in the morning because I just wasn't willing to risk, that crashing. It didn't feel good. I didn't feel I could keep any heat in the tires. So it just wasn't worth it to me.
No, Anna, let's be real. You were sandbagging. You went out and you set down really slow lap times in the morning just so you could come in the afternoon and be like, ha ha, got you.
What's funny is that I was a spectator, so I got to watch you guys. And, when I arrived, you guys were all having fun, kind of getting your bike together. And then it was like 30 minutes before the race, and it was like you could hear a pin drop. You were all in the zone and like sitting by yourself or kind of going through something in your head or stretching. And so the mood completely changed. And you guys went out there, it was very serious. And when you got back, oh my God, you guys were so excited. And it was like you got that out of your system.
I was just trying not to freak out. I mean, I hadn't practiced starts hardly at all. I mean, we practiced starts a little bit at the track day the Friday before, but that was my first time ever doing a start on my R6. And so I'm just like trying to go through in my head, like, don't stall the bike out, but also don't wheelie the bike. Just concentrate on your start and then just go from there. And it's so funny because now that you say that about hearing the pin drop, I can remember and think back to like just standing there beside my bike, kind of like it felt like a deer in headlights moment of what in the world did I get myself into?
Well, it was funny because I think we all geared up kind of early because it was the first race and we wanted to be like totally prepared. So we're all standing there like second call, helmet on, gloves on, like totally ready to go out. And then there's nothing to do. And you've already got earplugs in, so you can't really talk to anyone at that point. So we were just all standing there like ready to go, just
I was
on that third call.
Yeah, I was just meditating at that point. I think, Laura, you came over and wanted to do a little quick interview. And I was like, nope, I'm done. I'm out. Like, nope, I am in the zone right now. Sorry, I can't talk.
It was funny, because I think I had talked to you maybe 20 minutes before that. And I was like, how are you feeling? And you were really, really relaxed. And then you were like, oh my God, it hit me. I feel it. Butterflies. It hit me.
I've never experienced that before. Like, so I have a fear of public speaking, and I get like these really nervous, like, I guess butterflies, whatever you call it. Like my knees shake, and I get like, I almost get nauseously sick. This was different. This was definitely nerves, but I didn't feel sick, but I just can't even explain it. I've never felt anything like it. And just seeing like how through the weekend it progressed, like it got less and less. But it's funny because the second day, the first race, I felt that again. But then the following races, super calm. Like, I don't know why. It's like that first race of the day. It's like, oh God, do I remember how to do this?
Yeah. And, if you think about it, like, Anna, it's always been your dream to race. And so there also could be that at play, that you're like fulfilling this dream that you've had.
Yeah, for sure. I know I didn't want to disappoint myself. I think my biggest fear was a couple of years ago, I went and did a mock race, and I was so amped up and so nervous that I actually cramped up my body. Like, I have the nervous system issue. And anyways, I overexcited my nervous system. And in the first opening lap of the race, my body seized up, and I had this horrible pain, and my leg seized up. Like, I couldn't get it on the peg anymore. So that was kind of going in my head, like, oh God, don't get too excited. Don't put so much focus into this, because that might happen again. And that was like a huge, when that happened 2 years ago, that was like the biggest disappointment I felt in probably a decade of my life, because I've been like prepping for this, and it was something that I wanted to do so bad. And because of that, it actually took me down for the entire rest of that season. My body was never right to be able to race. So even if I wanted to do it, then I just couldn't deal with it. The pain was always there. So that was kind of in the back of my head too. And just Steve was just standing there like, just calm, you've got this. So that, that really helped. Knowing that we're all going through like that same fear together of the unknown.
Yeah, because I would say that for race 2 and race 3 of the first day, it was a different mood. You guys were much calmer. You had already been out on track. You've already had your first race. And, I don't think you'll ever get to experience those jitters pre-first ever race again. So it was kind of neat to be there and see you guys in that zone.
I feel like I'm going to be that same amount of jitters before every race day, just because it's a different track, it's different people, like
Yeah.
there's still so many variables that play that, I think I will never go into a race day and just be like, oh, I got this. It's going to be always that, like, initial feeling, and it's exciting, but it's scary at the same time. This next one, since I'm going and I'm pretty much like, y'all aren't going to be there with me. I'm going to be the only girl out in the 600 class. I'm like, that definitely makes me a little nervous because I feel like I don't have my friends. I don't have my pack with me. So we'll see how it goes.
But we're so glad that you're going to be representing women, because one of the things that was surprising to me was when we did the race at Little Tally, if our group of women hadn't been there, there really wouldn't have maybe like one other woman racing. And so I think it's awesome that you're going to Roebling and have have a female representation there.
For sure.
I'll try not to let you guys down.
Oh, you won't.
Just going, showing up, doing that, like Roebling terrifies me personally. I don't have really any experience on it. Last time I rode it, I was a novice. And I didn't have the greatest of experiences. My husband crashed there. So I just don't have the best memories from Roebling. I always wanted to ride it more. It's so far out, and logistically, it adds up. It's expensive. And that's like, I'm still recouping costs from 2 weeks ago from the Tally race, because it was so cold. Like, I normally sleep at the track, but because it was so cold, we went and got a hotel room. So, that's added costs that I normally don't deal with. So it's definitely a huge commitment. So
I feel like the only reason that I've decided to do Roebling is because, like you, Anna, Roebling scares me. Like, of all the tracks that they're racing this year, Roebling is by far the scariest track, in my opinion. And so I feel like I just have to do it to get it out of the way. Like, if I can go and face the scariest track and race it being the only girl out there racing on that scariest track, then the rest of the season hopefully will be much easier and less stressful.
Ladies, was it worth it? Was racing worth it? And do you think you'll do more race days or more track days going forward?
I plan to do both. So just because of my work and career situation and just life, I don't plan to do a whole season of racing. I plan to do maybe 2-3 races a year, and interspersed with that, some track days. And so I want to do both. Racing, to answer your question, racing was definitely worth it. It was everything I hoped it would be. I'm so glad I did it. It was an investment, but it was a worthwhile investment. And so I hope to see people at both track days and also some races.
Same.
I would say that I found it to be worth it. I learned a lot about myself. I overcame a lot of fear that I had and trepidation about, just pushing myself outside of that comfort zone, because I've kind of gotten to where track days are no longer that stressful to me. And so now I found something else to be really anxious about. So, like, let's just keep up in the game. And, I'm going to do Isle of Man TT next. Like, let's just keep going. I'd say it was definitely worth it. And as far as my mindset about track days has kind of changed now. Like, I love doing track days, but because of the expense of doing the racing, now I find that I'm really only looking at the tracks that I'm going to be racing on.
Just to throw in my perspective, I didn't race.
Was not racing worth it, Laura? How do you feel about the fact that you chose not to race?
I feel great about that decision. I really, have no interest in racing. I haven't done track for a while. The reason why I haven't done track is because I got really fast at track and just like the streets, which is the very reason, that I had avoided doing track for many years. And so anyways, I'm kind of out of that mindset. And, another reason is the logistics. to get my bike to track, to do everything. It's a lot of logistics. I have a stressful job. So for motorcycling for me is about enjoyment, and it's not about, the racing aspect or the competitive side of it. I do miss track to a degree. So I'm sure I'll continue to moonlight at track. But in terms of racing, I loved going there and supporting you guys. I loved being there, watching you guys get ready for the race. I loved bringing you guys coffee in the morning. That was a lot of fun. And I really enjoyed the celebration afterwards. Like, count me in.
Yeah, I'm so glad you were there, like, to experience that with us. I mean, it wouldn't have been the same without you.
Yeah, and I love that you guys are getting so much from racing. And I'm glad that you can balance that racing and still enjoy street. So that's something I have to
Street might not be quite as enjoyable, but still like it.
It's funny because a lot of people that I know that went into racing actually stopped riding street altogether. And I always wondered if that was something that would happen to me. I feel like right now on the horizon, absolutely not. I feel I'm still so new to riding, and I still haven't gotten so much out of my system. I can't get enough of it. Like, there's no way I'm not riding street anymore. Not yet. But I may slow down a little bit. I feel like I honestly, coming back from that race weekend, I got so much excitement and so much just out of my system. And I felt so fulfilled from racing that I actually didn't feel the need to go out and rip it on the street. Like, and I still don't. It's the weirdest thing. I've never experienced that before, actually. So maybe for me, I'm hoping that this is a good sign, and it will be a healthy relationship, because it's hard, the faster you get at track, like you said, Laura, it's really hard to tone it down on the streets.
Yeah, I don't know that I could go that far between riding. Like, the people who never ride street, I love riding. And so even if that means that on the street, I have to force myself to just sit back, enjoy the scenery and enjoy the company and just go ride, it's worth it to me, because I can't go for a month, 2 months between riding. Like, that's not part of who I am. Like, I would go crazy.
I'll definitely be doing track days as well. Like, logistically, racing is insanely expensive, just with everything that goes into it. And that's if you have a perfect weekend and you don't crash or you don't have any mechanicals or anything. So for me, what did we say? It was something like, the time that we rode with our race fees, it was something like $10 a minute or something. We averaged it out to for track time. I mean, I ended up spending, $500 just on entry race fees, outside of my license and everything else that goes into it that they don't tell you about. Where, I could have, and I rode a fraction of the time. I think all the races that I did, I probably only rode less than an hour for $500 worth of entry fees, where, at a track day, you're there all day, you get 7 20-minute sessions for a fraction of the price. But why did we do it? We did it for that emotional feeling, like that you can't get that at a track day. And I totally understand that now.
Do you remember, like, I don't know, for me at least, a year ago, complaining about how expensive track days are?
Uh-huh. That's why I kept laughing at you, going like, just wait. I think it comes down to really now we have to think about what we want to invest in. It's a huge investment. For me, it's an investment in myself, my skills, my emotion, my emotion. That's why I'm doing it. I'm doing this for myself, for nobody else. So it's got to be worth it. The financial struggle of it. I've worked my ass off just to make a few race weekends. Like, I can't afford to race a whole season. So, I'm just going to try and do as much as I can and save up enough money. And it's harder and harder when you get addicted. Like, when I came home, that's all I wanted to do. When's the next race? Like,
yeah, I felt that too. I wanted to sign up for a race right away, but I need to financially recover first.
And my question is, when's the next race?
That is March 20th, so 2 weekends away. So next weekend I'll be at the track practicing, and then the following weekend I will be at the track racing.
Great, ladies. Well, thanks so much for the recap, the post-race report. Sounds like it was a worthwhile event and you'll be doing it more. So can't wait to see you guys on track. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.